Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hello.
to the Pension Fund webinar for those who could not attend the physical meetings that we've been having in the past couple of weeks in various locations in the Netherlands. Because the participants in our pension fund do not all speak Dutch fluently, we are having this conversation in English today. What we want to do today is to run through a little bit about the recent developments that have occurred to our pension funds, such as the volatility in the financial markets, interim indexation that we have effected in October, and talk a little bit about our investment portfolio and investment returns. Then we want to talk about what we're doing to prepare ourselves for the new pension contract that is being developed in the Netherlands. And finally, we want to draw your attention to the risk preference survey that we'll soon be sending your way. Without further ado, Cor, could you tell us a little bit about the recent developments in the financial markets and how that has affected our pension fund?
Yeah, I will do that. But first I will tell something about how we are calculating the financial situation. We are using the coverage ratio for that. And the coverage ratio is giving you information about how much money we have and how much money is needed to pay out all the pensions in the far future. And it's strongly dependent on the financial markets and especially on the interest rate, which means that if the interest rate, for example, is 0 and I have to pay out pensions in 20 years, I need to have 1,000 euros today. But if the interest rate is rising and is going up, let's say with 2%, then we need less money today to pay out the same amount of pensions. And the dependency is very large. As you can see, it's about 33% less money needed to pay out the same amount in 20 years. And if we look now at the markets,
But
we see,
Cor,
yeah.
Now, if we say that the markets are so important for our pension fund,
Yeah.
Now how can it be that we've recently received an increase in our pensions and the pension entitlements when the markets have actually been going down?
Yeah.
Whereas in recent years when markets have been going up, we always were told no room for indexation.
Yeah, that's a very strange situation, and that's reflected in the coverage ratio. As I said, for this year alone, we lost about 20%. And what you can see in the picture is that the amount we need for the obligations to pay out the pensions has gone back with 33% at least. So there's a grow in the coverage ratio coming from. And if the coverage ratio is high, then we can give indexation. But I can see in your eyes that it's a little silly situation. You lose a lot of money and then you're going to do an indexation. But that's due to the fact that I need less money for the future payments because I already know that I get 2% of interest rates every year, so I don't need all the money now.
So the value of these future obligations, these liabilities, has gone down much further on our balance sheet than the value of our assets has declined.
Yeah, correct.
Very good.
Yeah. Then looking at the markets, what I already said is that the markets went down about 20% so far. And if we're looking at the interest rates, what we're talking about, you see that's rising from about 0 to more than 2%. So there you can see the large difference that we need less money for the future. And if you put those two in one sheet together, then you see the value of our assets. That's the red line that went down. But the value of the obligations that we have went down much faster. And that means that the coverage ratio went up. Let's see. And while it was going up, you can see that in October we did an indexation, and you can tell something about the indexation itself.
Yeah, so first I have a question though. You talk about a coverage ratio, and I see here it was 128%. Is that what we're basing our decisions on?
No, that's a good question. That's the actual coverage ratio, but we use a 12 months average going forward coverage ratio, and that's used for the policy of indexation. And that one is at the moment around 118, 120%. And that's used for calculating the indexation possibilities.
Right,
Yeah.
I see. All right, so now that we're on the subject of indexation, of course, we could see in the last graph that you showed us that there's a widening gap between the value of our assets and the burden of our liabilities, and this has led to increased pressure on the government, political pressure on the government to allow a relaxation of the rules for indexation. And the government has indeed relented this year and has allowed for what they call interim indexation, especially because we're growing towards a new pension system in the Netherlands where indexation is supposed to be made easier. So everybody was saying, well, why still be so strict? That was, of course, very useful because this year has also been a very high inflation, and been able to been allowed by the government to provide for indexation on a more relaxed basis. Now we at the board have formulated an interim indexation policy, in fact, and that policy consists of basically three elements. First, we decide what is the room for indexation, and we've decided that room for indexation is bound by what is the policy coverage ratio that you just explained, that 118.2%, and a floor for indexation, which is we've set at 110%. So that is the room for interim indexation. But we decided the amount of indexation to be only half of that, 50%. And we use as a reference period January of last year to December of last year, and 4.1% was the inflation or the interim indexation that we've been able to put into effect starting October. Now, many, of course, of you will have heard that in fact the government allowed indexation not from a floor of 110%, but 105%. And we have nevertheless thought that it was necessary to be a little bit more prudent because financial markets are so unpredictable. And also we want to make sure that when we move our current pension scheme into the new pension system that is being developed, that we at least are able to do that in a more or less financially neutral manner. And for that, we will need about a 10% buffer as well. So we've decided to keep a buffer of 10% on top of our coverage ratio to make sure that we can do that. And that's why we have come to the policy that we have just explained.
Okay.
Now,
but now
that's what we were able to do this year.
Yeah.
Now, what has happened since we didn't spend all the room for indexation this time?
Yeah.
What do you think next year, Cor, will happen?
Yeah, there is still some room next year, but we do not know what's happening until the end of the year. So we are a little bit cautious by saying how much we can do indexation. We can give a rough figure, but that means that if the markets do not change a lot, then we can do about 4% in the next year as well. But saying that, it must be in a stable financial world, because if everything is going down fast, then of course that is not possible.
Mm-hmm. So why is inflation so much more than indexation if we keep doing this?
Yeah, inflation is now a lot higher, went up quite significantly. But yeah, the coverage ratio didn't catch up with that due to the interest rates not going up as well so fast. So we cannot keep up with that.
I see.
That's a pity, but
So
it's not possible.
We basically cannot do more than the amount of money that we have allows. Also, our pensions have not been increased now for several years. We're talking now about inflation that is happening now. But do you think it will ever be possible to catch up on that, what we have lost out on before?
No, I'm afraid we can't. because there's still, let's say, about 2 or 3 years to go before the new pension system comes in. And then everything goes differently. And we will talk about that later, how that looks like. But we cannot catch up. And that's also not possible for lowering the pensions. What happened in 2023 or 13, it's not possible.
That's a very unfortunate but realistic.
Yeah, it's the realistic
assessment.
Yeah.
So, Cor, can you tell us a little bit about our investments?
Yeah, I can do that. Here we see the picture of the strategic asset allocation. That's how our money is divided over the different asset allocations. And what you can see is that we have about 25% in credits and about 17% in bonds from Germany and the Netherlands, from the government.
Excuse me, Cor, what are credits?
Oh, credits that are corporate bonds, so that are the same as government bonds, but then from companies.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not that we have credit with a bank or something.
No, we don't. No. And we have a lot of money invested in equity. And there are two specific parts of that, and that is impact investing. We have about 5 to 6% in a water fund, especially for being exposed to water innovation, which is good for the environment. And we have an investment in renewable energy, which is also impact investing.
And why do we call that impact investing?
Yeah, that's a way of saying, but what we want to do, we want to have impact on a better world. So we invest in renewable energy by solar fields and wind parks.
So we're actually sort of sticking our neck out a little bit,
yeah,
and actually invest in specific projects rather than in stocks of companies.
And the reason for that is that our company is looking at, let's say, sustainability. And that's what we're doing with these investments as well. So it's in line with what our members would like us to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's what you can see here. We asked our members, what do you think is important if we do invest your money? And there are 3 parts, and that is what I explained: water, renewable energy, and it also has a good effect on the climate situation.
And that's specifically for the impact investment.
Yeah, that's specifically for the 10%.
In those areas.
That's in those areas, and also on the other investments, we are also looking at what we call ESG figures.
Mm-hmm. And can we explain what ESG means?
ESG, that is looking at environment, social habits of the company, and the governance of the company.
So we're basically investing in companies that are doing well on those, scoring well on those issues.
And of course are financially also.
And are also financially successful. Yeah. Actually, as a board, we believe that, and it is our investment belief, that companies that do this will perform better in the long run than companies that forget about all these things in this day and age.
Yeah, maybe that's a nice bridge to the next page, because there you can see what returns we had, and what you see is what we said before, we lost about 20%, and what you also can see, the benchmark lost less. And the reason for that is we believe that doing sustainable investments brings money, but in times of war, which we are sitting in today, the less sustainable products deliver more returns at the moment.
Guns and tobacco
and so on, that's doing
things
very
that
well.
We want to stay away from. Yeah. All right.
Maybe now it's a good point to go over to the new pension system.
Yes, I mentioned a couple of times already that the government is working on a new pension system for the Netherlands. This has been a long, drawn-out process. The deadlines keep slipping. At this moment, what we seem to be sure of is that the deadline for the start of the new system is January 1, 2027. But we at the fund have decided to be a little bit more proactive and make sure that we are ready to move into the new system with all our operations and systems on January 1, 2025. And that's not because we're so eager to move into that new system, but we had set that earlier deadline back when the government's deadline was also a little bit closer to today. And we feel there is no reason to relax our deadline while we are in a process that is making good headway. And everything is going smoothly, and we're still confident that we're on track to develop our systems and operations and make them ready for the new system. So that's why we do that. Now, this new pension scheme, of course, we're working on our systems and operations, but we are not, as a fund, not the ones who are determining what the pension system for the company looks like. Actually, it is the corporate management and the Works Council that have to make decisions on what that system for DHV, for HaskoningDHV should look like. That means they will decide what benefits it should provide, what it is allowed to cost, how much are they willing to spend in the way of premiums, how much solidarity will be included in the system to help each other through not only the good times, but also years that are not so good.
Yep.
And we as a pension fund only advise on these issues, and we're also ready to point out whether what they come up with is doable or not. It could be that let's say the trees grow all the way up into the sky when it comes to the desires that they're formulating, but we have to keep our feet firmly on the ground.
Yeah, that's what we saw last year.
Yes. Now we have a steering committee that's been set up to guide this process along, in which all the bodies that are participating in this process are a member, and we're working to a closely monitored plan of action, which, like I said earlier, we're still on track to be ready by January 1 of 2025.
And how does it look like, the new system?
Well, one thing more that I would like to point out about who is involved, and that's particularly of note to the pensioners. There is an association of HaskoningDHV pensioners, and they will have also that is formally established in law, a right to be heard on the development of the new scheme, so that we can make sure, and they can also make sure and feel confident that their interests are also equitably taken care of in all this decision making. Now, what does this new system look like? And I'll talk about the system as a whole, not specifically the scheme that is in the works at HaskoningDHV. But
it's the same for the whole.
The system, as the government would like to see it come into being. First, it's a contribution system where pensions are determined by how much you pay into it in the way of premiums. That's not only, of course, you pay into it; it's also the company that also has the share, as we all know, pays into the system. And these premiums will be calculated into what is then known as a personal asset amount. And in that, those premiums will be invested in order to be able to increase steadily toward the future and grow to a level that on the date of retirement, we'll be able to convert that into a good pension. Now, these asset valuations will fluctuate, as Cor has already explained, and the fluctuation of the stock markets will be also reflected in the personal asset amounts, and that is, of course, a little bit of uncertainty that is there, that is now being made explicit in the system, whereas in the current system, most people think that their pensions are guaranteed. Actually, they're not. As we have seen, sometimes pensions are cut, but that's all seen as a great problem. And now in the new system, we'll be more upfront about the fact that pensions and pension entitlements can fluctuate over time. And it is this acceptance of that increased, that a little bit of increased uncertainty that allows for that system to make it easier to provide indexation, which in the current system is almost impossible.
Yeah, but
now perhaps Cor can explain a little bit about how the present and the new system work.
Yeah, but I have a question, because you say you can do earlier indexation, but that also means that the decrease is also
what it basically means is that yes, you accept the uncertainty, you can move and provide indexation, but it also you could see because you're not so very prudent as you are in the current system, that maybe you've done too much. You may have to correct it later on.
Yeah.
If the till is empty, then there's no money to pay out.
Yeah, and that's what I try to do in two pictures, the difference between the two of the systems. What we do today is the employer and the employee pay in a premium that's invested, and that is the capital, that is our assets. And then the other end, we have entitlements for all our members, and we give them a sort of entitlement on a monthly pension. So we calculate the amount that they will get per year. And in the new system, that's going to be completely different, because you still are going to pay premium, and the employer is paying a premium as well. That's put into assets, giving you a capital, but then you all get a small own pot of money. And that's a huge difference, because that is used at the end to calculate the pension. So there's a huge difference between the entitlement or just a sum of money. That's in the new system.
Right. Well, do we think that this new pension system will ever be implemented? See, given that the government is taking such a long time and deadlines keep slipping?
I think it will, but I think there will be a lot of discussions going on, and that's what you see now in the government as well. But I think there's been so much work on it that they might be impossible to stop it now. But what they said in the beginning, it will be less complex and easier to explain. And that's something that is really worrying me, because I don't think that the new system is really more explainable than the old system.
Yeah, I suppose the longer the politicians talk about it, the more axes they have to grind, and the more complicated the system becomes.
Yeah, and that's not a nice thing. And one thing I want to mention, and then I'll go over to the risk preference study, because what we said is there will be more volatility in your amount that you have on your own account, and we want to know from our pensioners how they feel about it. Maybe you can tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, but I really would like to know something more about the new system that you could perhaps explain. We're talking about the new system has more uncertainty in it that we're going to accept. But what if a person like myself, who is already retired, thinks, well, rather not have more uncertainty, rather keep what I have? Could I keep my pension in the old system?
No, sorry, that's not possible. Everybody moves over to the new system. But what we will do is we will looking into age groups, and the older you get, the less risk you take with your amount. So it will be different than today, and it will fluctuate more than today. But if you're already a pensioner, we will make the risk less than for the younger people.
Right.
And that's the difference, because now we have one pot of money with one risk for everybody.
Yeah. Will there still be a survivor's pension and a disability pension?
Yeah, those things will stay the same. The way to calculate it will change, but the system will still have those two effects as well. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well,
and that's very important for our members.
It certainly is. Well then, your question about the risk preference survey. Yeah, risk is, of course, it's a crucial element in pension fund management. It's also crucial in investing for a good pension. Why? Well, if you take into account that typically Dutch pension funds pay out pensions that are about 2.5 to 3 times the total of the premiums that were ever paid into the system, we see that the difference is made up by the return on investment. And therefore, it is essential that premiums are invested in stock market, in real estate, in all kinds of things. And of course, investing, that has to do also with a degree of risk. Risk is manageable, but nevertheless, it cannot escape having to take some risk from time to time. Because we simply cannot achieve the required returns of investment by just putting the money in the bank. Now, as Cor already explained, we will in the new system certainly assign more risk to the younger people in the younger age groups, and also to their personal asset accounts. Or amounts, so that these personal asset amounts have the more potential to grow faster, but of course also can fluctuate a little bit more over time. Whereas the asset amounts in the older age groups will be assigned less risk to make sure that, for example, pensions that have already started will not fluctuate too wildly. This is simply because younger people have a longer time to go until the date of retirement, and the personal asset amount needs to be calculated into a pension, and they can survive short-term dips in the market. And older people need to be a little bit more careful. But anyhow, with risk being so prominent in the new system, we need to get a better understanding of how our members feel about taking risk, what the understanding is of the need for taking risk, and also how they feel, whether they feel comfortable about taking risk. And to that end, we are going to be conducting a risk preference survey, which invitations will be sent out very soon. You will find information on this on the website, in the newsletter, and also on Yammer. We strongly recommend taking some time out when you receive the invitation to fill out the survey and return your answers to us, because it's really necessary for us to be able to formulate a good risk posture for the fund as a whole.
And do I get then the possibilities to tell you where you should invest, and will you invest in that then?
No, it's not a matter of where we should invest. There may be other questions at other times about where we should invest. This is more about risks and risk appetite, and where the risks are is something to be left to the fund managers who have their professional systems for that.
And who will bear all the risk? Because now it's more collectively. Is it then put into my own accounts, all the risks?
The risk now is also borne by all the members of the pension fund, except we don't seem to recognize that or to know that. Okay. But since about 20 years, all risks of market developments with respect to the coverage ratio that you described earlier have been assigned to the members of the fund. And that's also why the current employees and the retired former employees have a majority in the various governing bodies of the pension fund.
So the risk hasn't changed, but it's now more visible.
The risk hasn't changed. It will now be more specifically allocated to the different age groups. Yep. Only because we want to make sure that the younger age groups will in that way get a better potential for growth of their personal asset amounts, and to make sure that on the other hand, pensions that are or asset amounts that are closer to conversion into pension, or pensions that have already started, will not fluctuate so much anymore.
Seems like a good story. And now we need to ask all the people to fill in that questionnaire, because then we know.
Yes, that's why
How
we
it-
strongly recommend that they do that. And please, when you receive the invitation, take some time to do it. It won't take too long, and you will really help us out by filling out this form.
And if you have any general or specific questions about your situation, you can send an email to pensioenfonds@rhdhv.com, where we will sit and wait for your questions. Thank you for your attention, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. Dankjewel.
Goodbye.
Bye.